Ah,
All right. I'm recording on my computer as well, I believe.
all right.
Yeah.
And you've never run across, have you ever tested any transcription software that,
I mean, years ago, we looked into it for, I looked into it but this was like, I forget, I can't even remember why, but it was, I'm probably talking about 10 years ago. I figure it must be
yeah,
way ahead of, it doesn't seem like rocket science. And I think there is like just like there's Google Translate, I think there might be some Google tool for transcription, but I'm not sure. Anyway, it's who knows? It's
well,
probably come a long way. If you get on journalists' uh, um, forums and stuff, I bet there's a big discussion about it.
well, my old boss used to, what he finally did, Apple has one on the iPhone. The thing is, it really only, it's not good at two different voices. So it doesn't work for a situation like this. But what he would do is he would um, play back the recording and stop and then dictate it and it would transcribe it.
Oh,
I can,
okay.
I can,
Yeah.
I can, instead of dictating, I can type faster than I can talk anyway. So it, it doesn't seem to me he was really gaining anything.
Probably not. And there's probably
Making
services
mistakes.
in like based in India or the Philippines where there's, a lot of English speakers, but can work at a lower rate sometimes. I bet there's some transcription service that's
Oh,
really
there, yeah,
cheap.
there are
That,
lots of them. There are
yeah.
lots. They,
So
they
that
all
might
make
be,
mistakes. They all make mistakes,
of course.
depending
Yeah.
on how much they know about your subject. And when you've
Right.
got a specialized subject, then they make more mistakes.
Yep.
But okay.
Definitely.
So anyway, we'll save that one for another time. So why did you decide to get a cybersecurity certificate from Harvard last year?
Well, I'm a general counsel to several small companies, and I think there are certain issues that every general counsel needs to understand and be up to speed on, and I would view cybersecurity as one of those important issues.
Is that true, regardless of the size of the company that we're talking about?
Yes, at least in my opinion, yes. If you think about it, even as individuals, we face cybersecurity issues, right? If you're an individual who uses a computer at home and it's connected to the internet and you're getting various services from Amazon or from other service providers, we all should be doing password maintenance, for example, frequently updating our passwords, not using the name of our pet or our kid as our password. And so certainly any business of any significance, I think, does need to pay attention to cybersecurity. So whether you're a solo GC or you're running a 5,000 lawyer legal department, I think there's a certain baseline of knowledge that you need to have about cybersecurity so you can appropriately advise your management team.
That makes me think of an article I wrote in a recent issue about CLEs. And when at the time I wrote it, and the reason I say that is because there are two states that were contemplating uh, adopting rules along these lines. At the time I wrote it, Florida was the only state that had a required CLE component on technology, so that lawyers' um, licenses were dependent upon their taking classes or a class in technology. Um, and it was surprising to me that no states had even joined Florida. There were two states that were contemplating it. What do you think about that kind of requirement?
I like the idea of that. In general, I'm an advocate for lawyers being more tech savvy. And I went to law school a few decades ago, and back then, I think one of the drivers of law school attendance was people that were generally smart but didn't want to have to work with computers. And I think that's changed completely in the decades since. I have a background as an engineer, so I like to think I've always been pretty open-minded in terms of adopting technology in my practice to make me more efficient. But I think in general, lawyers have not done a very good job as a profession in trying to understand the latest technology. So I think you need to understand the benefits of technology, and you need to understand the threats posed by technology to the to your clients, whether that's an in-house business client or you're an outside lawyer that has a practice with many clients.
And getting back to the threat issue, so you got this cybersecurity certificate. What did it do for you?
Well, what I hope it did for me was to give me a solid baseline of knowledge as of the current time, so that I understand the major issues of cybersecurity that are facing businesses today, and so that I can help my clients ensure that they have the right type of cybersecurity infrastructure in place, given their size and given their budget for this type of system. So, I think that the course did that. This was a course not for lawyers specifically, but for any professionals who wanted to be proficient in the cybersecurity area. So there were a lot of engineers. There was maybe one or two other lawyers, but it was primarily both cybersecurity professionals and business people who felt they needed to know more about the issue.
How many hours was the course?
So it was an 8-week course. You could go to the Harvard X website for the statistics, because I don't know exactly, but it was pretty rigorous. It was an 8-week course, and it required a commitment. It's probably about if you put it into a single day, it might be a full day, a pretty hard day of work each week, and maybe a day and a half of work. So you had to fit it into your existing work schedule. So it was pretty demanding, and the graders were pretty tough. It was done largely online, but there were also sort of live by video segments, and there was a significant written homework project each week.
Okay. No gut. It was not a gut class.
I don't think so. I mean, it's been a while since I've had a course in which I was formally graded, but I felt like it definitely kept me on my toes, and I felt it was also true of my fellow students.
Okay. Now, when did you decide to start a cybersecurity working group in the House, and why?
So that was a decision I made in tandem with other considerations in the House, and I decided that it was important to bring groups of professionals together, groups of in-house professionals with a common goal, or I guess really more a series of common goals, because I thought it was difficult in the existing environment for in-house counsel with a particular interest to easily find colleagues that shared those interests and to share information, share best practices, talk about important topics. So as part of a larger movement in the House to create specialty working groups, you might consider them as the rough equivalent of a bar association committee. But I want to use the term working group because I want to emphasize the fact that we're really rolling up our sleeves and trying to grapple with some of the most important issues facing in-house counsel. So they all started really early this year in the conceptual phase, and we're sort of moving forward. Each of them is moving forward apace as we bring on board chair people for those groups, and we start to get guest speakers on board and also seek out sponsors for the individual groups so that we can bring a few more resources to each issue. So I would say that the cybersecurity group was one of the ones that I viewed as extremely important, and that was also part of the reason I took the cybersecurity course from Harvard, not only to be a better GC, but to give me more ideas for that working group.
Good. Now, what do you hope that this particular working group, the cybersecurity one, accomplishes?
Well, really, I'd say I sort of have two goals for the group currently. One is I'd like the group to become the go-to destination for in-house counsel who care deeply about cybersecurity issues and want to figure out how they can best serve their internal clients by being knowledgeable about the issue, and also work best with their technical colleagues. That's really goal one, is create this destination. The second one is to help groom thought leadership within the in-house community on this topic. And this is a common thread that I've seen with a lot of different issues for in-house counsel. There's not really, it's hard to find out sort of who the most knowledgeable people in this area are when it comes to in-house counsel. It's a little easier to make those kind of decisions when you're looking at technical professionals, because there's existing groups that are there to certify cybersecurity professionals, but we don't have that within the in-house community for whatever reason. It might be just partly that, you know, traditionally we're sort of an understated community. We sort of, you know, we don't like to make a lot of noise about what we're working on. We care about our clients' confidentiality. But one unintended consequences of that is it's really hard to find other people who care about this issue, and even more difficult to find out who are the emerging thought leaders within the in-house community who can talk intelligently about this issue and advise their peers, both within their company and at other companies, about what are the best practices. If you're an in-house lawyer, what do you need to know? How do you most effectively advise your management team? How do you most effectively work in lockstep with the technical professionals at your company to make sure you are staying on top of trends? So it's a tough issue, and it's a fast-moving issue, as we all can see in the press every day. It's one that it's not easy to stay on top of, and we can't really do it alone. You can't just join a blog. I think you need to talk regularly with colleagues to stay on top of these issues.
Why did you ask us, the editors at Cyber and Security Newsletter, to co-chair the Cybersecurity Working Group?
Well, first, I like your name. So I think, I'm joking, but it's a clever name, but it also captures the fundamental instability that we have in this area. And I like the name for that reason, even more than that it's a clever name. So I think that cybersecurity is one of those areas where if you're smug or comfortable, you're doing something wrong. If we're not all concerned about this issue and wondering what we're missing, you're almost certainly missing something. So I like your approach. And I also like to work with very sort of fleet-footed partners, because as you know, as legal professionals, we're part of a profession that traditionally looked backwards, looked at precedent, analyzed, and we need to figure out a way to add to that knowledge base and be more forward-looking, because we're in a much more faster-moving environment than we've ever been in before. And I thought working with a publication like Cyber Insecurity would be a great way to help the members of in the House's community stay on top of those trends, and spur discussions of the topics that we all need to be paying attention to.
Good. Now, you have a graphic that we're going to display with this article. And it shows 5 areas where you have concerns about the way, in your view, the in-house world is underserved. 3 of the areas are education, that is what the in-house lawyers need to know, media, media specifically tailored to them or for them, and legal technology that's curated for them. Cybersecurity, and our publication in particular, loom large in all three at 60% of your agenda. We are media that's aimed at curating and tailoring our information for them in particular. And, we also attempt to share information, the education component, and legal technology. Is that what makes this subject in particular such a big deal these days, in your view?
I do think, you sort of put your finger on sort of the fact that cybersecurity cuts across many of the issues in which we feel that in-house counsel have traditionally been underserved. And I guess I would say, to my mind, the reason for that, the reason that cybersecurity cuts across so many of these issues, is the same reason that cybersecurity is infiltrating every aspect of our lives, whether we're a in-house lawyer or have some other professional niche. Because if you stop and think about it, partly because we've become so dependent on technology, and partly because we all carry these supercomputers around in our pocket now that know our location and have a lot of our most sensitive information, we can't ignore cybersecurity. Whether you're talking about the personal issues we deal with, credit cards, online banking, password management, smartphone apps that might be aware of where we're driving or where we're going, whether you're talking about politics, everything from the Russian hack investigation to the IRS hack that exposed a lot of taxpayers' private information a few years ago, or you're talking about business, the Yahoo breach, which had a tremendous impact on that business and greatly diminished the value of that company during its acquisition by Verizon, the Target breach, which was a very big deal for that company and its customers, or the Experian breach. So these cut across every area of our personal and professional lives, and I'd say in-house counsel are no exception. So, we need to be educated on this issue as in-house professionals. We need to be consuming media that enlightens us about these issues. We need to be networking with our peers who can provide sort of up-to-the-minute information on what we need to be dealing with. We need peers we can call in a crisis to understand if they've dealt with similar situations. And we need to have a better handle on what the legal technology surrounding cybersecurity is, or better way to articulate that is, we need to understand what technology either we can use or our peers can use in the business, so that we're managing our cybersecurity risk appropriately. And just one last mention on that topic. One reason I think lawyers are well suited to play a role is, especially in-house counsel become expert risk managers. That's one of the core skill sets that in-house counsel develop, or certainly should develop. And so while we're accustomed to legal risk management, we have those intellectual muscles, I think, to deal with cybersecurity risk management, because it's a similar set of issues, or a similar approach is used in both areas.
So who can join this cybersecurity working group, and how do they go about it?
So that really goes to our membership management at In the House, and we have a different approach to, I guess I would contrast us with traditional bar associations in terms of how we approach membership. And especially in the last year, we've made a business decision to be far more outward looking and to reach out to people throughout the legal community and indeed the business community. So really, anyone can join In the House as long as they care deeply about in-house counsel and they believe in our mission, which is all about empowering in-house counsel. And those are, even though in theory anyone can join, I view the caveats as really important. You know, it's really important that if you're going to join our community, you're willing to contribute to meaningful discussions and understand that our focus is 100% on helping in-house counsel succeed and helping not only the individual in-house counsel succeed in their careers, but helping in-house counsel collectively to lead the legal industry in those issues that will be driving the future success of our clients.
Okay.
And that, so if you want to join the cybersecurity working group, you just need to join In the House. You just go to inthehouse.org, click on join us, and it takes a few minutes to join our group.
And what kind of expense are we talking about?
It's pretty minimal, frankly. The dues, we've made a decision that we're a very affordable community. So, full-time in-house counsel, it is $8.95 a month to join. Wait, I'm gonna have to start over again because I need to log out to be sure of this. So hang on just a second. So yeah, monthly full-time in-house counsel, it's $8.95 a month. And if you're a part-time in-house lawyer, it's $9.95 a month. That is somebody who devotes a portion of your practice to being an in-house counsel. And if you're just someone who's interested in the in-house community and you want to support us and participate in our discussions, that's an affiliate membership, and that's $12.95 a month. So, I say that it's kind of coffee and donut money. So, usually if I walk into a Starbucks, it's hard to walk out spending less than 10 to 12 bucks if you get a coffee and something to eat. So we want this to be a no-brainer for people that care about this community.
Now, companies can become sponsors of the in-house, your in-the-house community.
Correct.
How do they do that, and what are the benefits?
So the way to become a sponsor is really quite easy. We're a organization that believes in efficiency and straightforwardness. So I encourage anyone who's truly interested in partnership or sponsorship opportunities within the house, they can simply email me at chris@inthehouse.org. We'll schedule a time to speak, and we'll see if it makes sense for the sponsor, and if it makes sense to our community, then we'll move forward together.
Now, In the House offers working groups that, such as the ones we've been talking about, networking groups, some live events, and the video chat, which we're actually doing right now, the two of us, seems to be your communication method of choice. How do these pieces all fit together in this one organization?
Well, what I would say is that we're truly interested in substance, and I think that it really helps in order to have substantive discussions that are meaningful to our membership. It's really important that we not let that we use the most efficient technology, that we as efficient a technology as possible to bring members together. And video conferencing has really evolved over the last year to year and a half, where it's become a technology that's almost universally available and works quite well. So what I would say, what I've come to believe is that professional networking, whether it is in-house lawyers or other groups, has become really a killer app for video conferencing. If you think about what networking is and how you build a personal network, everything you can do by gathering in a conference center or some other physical location, you can do effectively by video. So I've come to view technology really as a wonderful tool that we can use to bring people together very affordably. And I actually view video as sort of a twofold technology when it comes to our community in the following sense. I think that video is a great tool for exchanging information in casual networking sessions, so that people can be wherever they need to be geographically and can easily share information with each other. But video is also a great tool for leadership development, which is very core to our mission. And I'll use a couple of anecdotes to illustrate that from my personal life, if I may. So I think I mentioned I'm a former engineer, and I still really like to tinker. So, a few months ago, my dryer broke, and I like to try to fix things around the house myself. 10 years ago, I would have gotten out the manual, tried to puzzle it out and see how to fix it. But if you go on YouTube these days, you'll find leaders in virtually every area offering advice. So I found a guy after probably, maybe 15, 20 minutes of Googling around, I found a guy who did a series of videos about how to fix dryers and other, dryers and washing machines. And I liked this guy. I liked his personality. I thought he conveyed the information well. And he takes you through a checklist of how to fix dryers, and he breaks them out by make and model. So I went through his little online course on how to fix my dryer. He even told me the part I thought I needed to order. So I ordered a $200 part. I fixed the machine myself, and I spent $200 instead of probably $2,000 for a new, dryer. And it was a pretty high-end dryer, so I didn't really want to replace it. So, that's the kind of learning that you can now get by video that would have been literally impossible not that many years ago. I'll also use an anecdote about my daughter, who really loves to bake. She was interested in baking, and she started out baking just by buying the Betty Crocker box and following the instructions. But then not too much later, she discovered, this person who I'd never heard of, but is a big celebrity in the world of baking. And she has a whole series of really high quality videos that are fun and engaging and teach people of all ages how to bake. And about a year later, my daughter's really an expert baker. She makes amazing treats. It's certainly better than what I could ever make. And so this kind of knowledge sharing is now all over the place, right? And I really think we need to do a better job as professionals of adopting that same technology and using it. So one of our initiatives is that we're partnering with another company to create really high quality video profiles of in-house thought leaders. That's a project which is getting underway as we speak. And these are videos that will both convey knowledge to other members, but also help our community members become leaders within this community. And I really do think technology can be transformative. And one thing that we're doing different is we don't believe in sort of waiting for a big annual conference to share information. I kind of think of that now as like waiting for the packet boat to arrive from England in the old days of the Royal Navy. I mean, that's how people used to get their mail, and it was the fastest technology of the time. But why would we wait for the big annual conference on cybersecurity to exchange information with our peers? That doesn't make any sense. It's too late, and it's quite frankly not the most efficient mechanism. So I went on at length, but to get back to your question, how it all fits together, we really believe in video networking and online forums for exchanging information on a regular basis. Those are our workaday tools for establishing and sharing best practices. We believe in-person get-togethers because we're human beings, and I think we need to know each other better, and you really can't replace in-person networking fully by online tools, but I think that the in-person get-togethers can be more social in nature and get to fully know each other as friends and as colleagues. And that's a better use of that time than having a bunch of talking head presentations. And I'll just take you back to the very beginning of In the House. The first idea for it came about because I'd attended countless meetings for in-house counsel where the information conveyed was okay. There was nothing wrong with it. But by far, the best session was the post-meeting networking over cocktails or over lunch if it was a morning meeting. That's what people came for. And so what our goal was let's go straight to what people care about, which is networking, helping each other. And that sort of daily interaction that's more business-like and focused, that can be done almost completely with technology these days.
Okay. Now, one of the issues that our publication keeps returning to is the relationship between companies under attack and the government. Friends, enemies, frenemies, what is that relationship? Well, you know, we've often had experts tackling the question of when should companies cooperate? When should they report breaches? When should they ask for help? When should they worry about finding themselves in the crosshairs, targeted by regulators or pressured to turn over customer information? Are these, I guess, really it's one big subject, but many sub-subjects. Are these issues that your members worry about?
Yeah, I think they absolutely are. I mean, it would be hard to be alive and have a pulse and not be concerned about those issues in this day and age. And I do think actually government or other private companies could be friends, they could be enemies, they could be frenemies, they could be all different things at different times. It's very individual to your company, the company that you serve. It's very situational. One thing lawyers are good at, fortunately, is sort of playing those multiple roles. I mean, anyone who's practiced law for more than a few years has had colleagues that were at one time on the other side of an issue, but then at some point you find yourself on the same side of an issue. And we're pretty good at being objective and being situational and saying, well, maybe I can cooperate with this person in one context, but be their opponent in another context. And I think that is something we learned, most of us, pretty early in our legal careers. And I think we need to be flexible in these areas. Cybersecurity is an example of where, you know, there are clear good guys and bad guys. There's, you know, a lot of professional hackers out there that are very talented and are either in it for political purposes or mercenary financial purposes. And I think we all need to band together. All professionals of good faith need to work together to fight those folks. But individually, you know, we also have our clients that we need to serve. And those two jobs will sometimes go hand in hand, but sometimes they won't. Sometimes we need to oppose government action if we have a good legal basis for it and it's the appropriate action to take on behalf of our clients. But at other times we may need to cooperate with government. So I think, you know, I don't think there's one answer to your question, but it's certainly something that in-house counsel care deeply about in my experience. And that's, again, one of the reasons we're starting this group is let's start to talk about these things and let's start to have sort of I think of it as sort of an informal board of advisors so that we can go, you know, who do you call when, you know, you have a question on these things? In-house counsel, like others, sometimes, you know, within our own companies, we often want to seem like we have all the answers, and sometimes that's a way to present ourselves professionally, but that doesn't mean we can't call our friend at another company and sort of say, hey, I'm dealing with this unusual situation. Have you guys dealt with that, or do you know someone who has? And that can be a great way to, I think everybody can benefit from that kind of information sharing.
What are some of the other aspects of cybersecurity that worry in-house lawyers who you have contact with?
So I think a few areas. One area that is very confusing is education. That's one reason I took the Harvard course was what do I need to know as a lawyer? Um, you know, it's a little easier to understand if you're the tech person sitting in the tech command center of your company. I think that's maybe a little more straightforward question what those people need to know. But if I'm a lawyer who I don't know might deal primarily with employment issues or might deal primarily with litigation issues, what is the knowledge base that I need? What is my company expecting? What should they expect? Uh, what do I need to know, and how do I acquire that knowledge? I think is a sort of a free floating anxiety in the legal community right now. A related anxiety is where are the boundaries? Um, what can I safely leave to the tech people, and what do I need to know so that I can be a better partner to the tech people or advise them as to what they should be doing? Because the tech folks don't always have all the answers. Sometimes they need guidance from legal so that they're doing things in a way that is going to best serve the company. A good example that's very much current is the GDPR uh, provisions that went in effect in Europe. Um, and you know, as I'm not an expert in this area, but I know enough to say that if your company touches EU citizens in any way, you better know a little bit about GDPR. And the tech folks may be up on that, or they may be aware of some checklists that they have. But if they're not getting good legal advice along with the tech advice they're getting from their peers, they may there may be missteps. So I think we need to partner with the tech people. And again, where's the boundary and how do you work together? A similar boundary exists between lawyers and non-lawyer business executives. Where does business judgment come in? Where does legal judgment end? Where does business judgment come in? And what's the give and take when it comes to budgeting for these types of issues and planning for, you know, insurance and litigation reserves and all the other things that lawyers, in-house lawyers, need to think about. So it's those boundaries and those the sort of unclear educational path, which is really some of the biggest issues that I hear about.
Good. Um, so, what do you think? What do you expect to see in the year ahead? What kinds of developments are you expecting we'll see in this area that's been very hard to predict, really month to month, much less looking out a year? But what does your crystal ball tell you?
Well, one of the primary takeaways that I got from the Harvard cybersecurity course, which was repeated over and over again during the course, was it's not if your company's going to be the victim of a cybersecurity incident, it's when and how bad will that incident be. And that's something that I still think is not been fully absorbed by the larger community, both in-house lawyers and others. And I think so. One thing I think we can continue to assume is that hackers and other bad actors will continue to get better, continue to evolve, continue to use new strategies, and go after not only soft targets but harder targets. So I think there's something of an arms race going on, and I think that will continue. I think it's been proven that these bad actors can achieve very significant political goals. They can achieve very significant financial objectives. They have cryptocurrencies that can be used to compensate them for their misdeeds and not be traced. So that's really the only prediction I can make, is that this is going to continue to be a very difficult problem for a lot of us. Another prediction that I'd like to make is that in-house counsel will better understand the role that they play and better understand what the resources they have at their disposal are, both educational resources, media resources, uh, colleagues who can help them in their hours of need, So I think that as we work together with cyber insecurity and hopefully other partners who care about cybersecurity and care about in-house lawyers, we'll have a community of interest on trying to start to talk about these problems. I think, lawyers, I guess a lot like journalists, lawyers kind of do three things, right? We listen, we analyze, and then we report and recommend. I guess I don't know if journalists do the recommend piece. That's editorials.
We try to. We try to.
So that's what we do. And if you don't have the first piece, if you're not listening and you don't know who to listen to, you can't, the analysis is meaningless and the reporting and recommendation is meaningless. So I think we're at an early stage in this process. We need to know who to listen to and start listening to each other. And then then the other areas can be, then we can be more effective in our analysis and more effective in our advice.
Now, this is certainly true of the media. We have a tendency to dwell on the dangers, the risks, the threats, the bad news. Do you see evidence of progress and reasons to be optimistic about the future in this area?
I do, yeah. I think, I'm sort of an optimist by nature, I guess. I think that it's for me, it's easier to navigate through the world as an optimist because I like to focus on the positive developments in many areas. And we have to sort of hope for the best and plan for the worst, as the old saying goes. But I do think that lawyers are becoming more aware of cybersecurity. It's an acknowledged area of expertise now. And I think the lawyers that I speak with, whether they're in-house or outside lawyers, most of them see it as more than just a professional opportunity to make money or to burnish their credentials. I think they understand that the experienced lawyers have a real skill set that can be applied to these issues. I think a lot of lawyers can be calm in a crisis. They're able to sort of be objective. And I think that, being calm and addressing these issues in a very logical way is really a skill set that lawyers can bring to the table. So I think we should have a seat at this table, and I think we have a lot to offer. And I think it's an area where laws and rules and regulations do matter. And so lawyers are a necessary part of this conversation. So I'm very optimistic that not only will the good guys be able to keep up with the bad guys, but that the lawyers will be among those good guys helping that process to happen. And just by getting these conversations started and by trying to identify emerging leaders in this area, I think we're doing a lot. And I think that's a necessary first step to, I don't know if you can ever solve this problem, because I think that, like I said, the bad guys are going to, be working hard, toiling away also. But there's a lot more interest in this area than there ever was before. I don't think people view it as boring anymore. I think it's now viewed as a really interesting area, full of risk, but full of opportunity. And that's kind of the first step you need so that you can bring intelligent people to this issue.
There have been some really high-profile breaches at large law firms in the past year. DLA Piper was one victim, Weil Gotshal and Cravath. That's three right there in the news. This vulnerability has long been a concern to many general counsel. Has anything changed as a result? Have law firms made any progress in the past year shoring up their cybersecurity?
I don't know if I'm the right guy to ask that question to. I'm a former big firm partner, and I do think in general, I guess my view when it comes to lawyers and technology, it can become a difficult area because, it's hard, I think, given their business model, for law firms to invest too heavily in technology. There's been a lot written about the law firm business model, and I guess my own personal view is it can sometimes, that business model can make it a little difficult to look beyond the quarterly profits per partner. And I don't think that's done for necessarily uh, improper reasons or anything like that, but I think that's that's still the primary business model of most law firms. And so it's a little hard to invest in technology that's designed to avert some possible future event. I don't know how we address that other than, my preferred mode, which is to get smart people talking together. So I guess if I could get the ear of the AmLaw managing partners, I would urge them to band together for their own mutual interest and to work on this problem together. They may duke it out in high profile cases, but it's in all of their interests to work on this issue and make sure they're protecting their clients' data. Um, I would, attorney-client privilege, trade secrets. These are things that lawyers handle many lawyers handle these very sensitive information on a daily basis. You can think of it as almost like the PII of corporations. So you want to be very careful with this information. And I think law firms need to do that. But again, I'm optimistic because at least the problem has been identified. And I think rather than play a kind of blame game, I think we better solve this issue. The law firms need to solve it for their own protection and benefit and for the benefit of their clients. I think this is an area I've actually see a lot of areas like this. One thing that's important to In the House and our mission is let's find those areas where in-house counsel are actually leading. I think there are a variety of areas where in-house counsel are actually out ahead of their law firm peers, and I think law firm peers can learn from their clients in this regard. Businesses are often at the front end of many issues. You could say cybersecurity. You could say executive misconduct's another one where a lot of in-house counsel are now on the front lines of these issues. A lot of knowledge sharing needs to happen, and part of our mission at In the House is to be more outward facing. And so I encourage any law firm partners that care about this issue and want to become part of the conversation around cybersecurity. We welcome that. I think law firm partners often think that their interaction with in-house counsel is about business development or showcasing their expertise or their credentials. I would urge law firm partners to also think of themselves as members of a community that ultimately is designed to support corporate legal departments. And part of that mission should be having these tough conversations, like how do we achieve the best cybersecurity we can as a unified legal community, whether it's in a corporate legal department or at a law firm. And so I think these are really important conversations for us to have.
What can corporate law departments do to encourage this?
To encourage what? More discussion with law firms?
To encourage not just more discussion, but also that they make a commitment to give them the sense that their data is not going to be at risk, because even if it's an unusual event, the potential damage to the corporate law department can be huge.
Well, one issue to think about, I don't want to pretend that I have all the answers in this sort of newly emerging area, but I would encourage us to think about whether cybersecurity is part of a larger trend going on, at least that I perceive in the legal industry. And that is a trend towards bringing mission critical resources in-house. Law firms are very good at managing very acute, difficult legal issues. They're not set up as much to deal with ongoing day-to-day problems that occur. That's much more the skill set of in-house legal departments. So I would use an analogy. If you go back 10, 15 years, there was almost no in-house management of e-discovery, right? The law firms each had their own e-discovery vendor or multiple vendors. They handled a litigation, they got the e-discovery process going, and they ran it as a project. That is becoming more the exception than the rule these days. Certainly the larger legal departments are seeing a lot of benefit in bringing that critical project in-house. I think in many ways, managing cybersecurity is one that corporations are probably better suited to bring the right resources to the table. So I would view, I don't know what that partnership might look like, but I would encourage in-house legal departments not necessarily to look for law firms to blame for problems, although certainly if that could happen. More, how do we work together to avoid the problems? It might be that law firms bring certain things to the table, but corporate legal departments bring other resources to the table. And they're managing corporate secrets and other sensitive data. Ultimately, that responsibility ultimately lays at the feet of the corporation itself. And part of that responsibility might be fulfilled by hiring the right law firms that are following the right best practices in this area. But I think another part of it is having that discussion to figure out what are those best practices and who should be doing what.
Got it. Well, those are all the questions I had prepared. Is there anything you want to add before we sign off?
Yeah, if you don't mind, a couple things is, I think you asked a question what the sponsorship benefits were, and it was probably my fault. I went off on a tangent. So I wanted to make sure I highlighted that as something to circle back to. And so when you become a sponsor of In the House, what I view the primary benefit to be is that you get to be part of the most important discussions facing the in-house legal community today. And you can work with us and work with our membership to explore exactly what in-house counsel need from what I think of as the vendor community, everything from law firms to cybersecurity consultants to e-discovery firms to compliance consultants. There's this vendor community surrounding law departments, and we're trying to get discussions going not only about what in-house counsel can do to help themselves, but what are those outside resources we can call on to help us. So I view the primary benefit to our sponsors as be a permanent part of these difficult conversations. That's the best way to then be viewed as part of the solution for for the membership community that we serve. And one other thing I made note to mention is just the mission of In the House, because as I spoke, I realized that a lot of what we do is really just corollaries to our core mission. So we view our mission as empowering in-house counsel by giving those counsel access to the relationships, the information, and the technology that they need to succeed in their individual careers, and also to collectively lead the legal industry into the future. So it's that mission that informs sort of all the things that you and I talked about today.
Okay, that's good. I'm going to stop the tape. There are just two things I want to add before we sign.